Ballot item number 4, Order M8, second reading of Bill 8, an act respecting Ontario One Call Limited. Mr. Bailey.
Sarnia Lambton.
Speaker, I move second reading of Bill 8, an act respecting Ontario One Call Limited.
Mr. Bailey has moved second reading of Bill 8, an act respecting Ontario One Call Limited. Pursuant to Standing Order 98, the member has 12 minutes for his presentation.
Speaker, and I want to announce at the start that I will be sharing my time today with the member from Hamilton East Stony Creek. Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I would like to draw your attention to the West Visitor and Members Gallery. Seated there, you will find supporters of Bill 8, the Ontario One Call Act 2011, representing industry, safety organizations, and municipalities. I would like to pay special recognition to Jim Douglas, President of the Ontario Regional Common Ground Alliance, who is sitting in the West Members Gallery with the other board members of the Ontario Regional Common Ground Alliance. They are here today representing, and not inclusive, Toronto Hydro, Avertex Utility, Vivax Inc., Landscape Ontario, the City of Toronto, Acon Utilities, the WSIB, TransCanada, AECOM, Hydro One Networks, Enbridge Gas Distribution, Union Gas, Bell, ACI Survey Consultants, GTEL Engineering, and the Ontario Home Builders Association. And I would also like to welcome Kevin Easy, past president of the Ontario Sewer and Water Association, who flew in from Ottawa especially today for my bill. They have shown tremendous leadership by championing the issue of safety for Ontario residents, and thank you to everyone for your support. Mr. Speaker, my riding of Sarnia-Lambton is home to Ontario's oil, gas and chemical industry, an industry that I devoted over 30 years of my life to. In fact, just prior to my election to this House, I worked at Nova Chemicals, the St. Clair River Works facility, where I was the contractor coordinator, and I was in charge of issuing excavation permits as well as safety permits. Mr. Speaker, when working in Sarnia's Chemical Valley, the first lesson that I learned, and that any new employee learns there today, is that safety is always priority job one. And Ontario, I'm proud to say, Sarnia-Lambton is 25 times safer. An employee in the construction industry or any other industry is 25 times safer working in Sarnia-Lambton because of the work between the unions and the management and the local community. If you talk to any of the hard-working employees involved in Sarnia's petrochemical industry, they'll tell you that knowing what the dangers you face on a job site is the only way to know what sort of precautions you need to make. This is even more important when your job site is made up of a vast underground network of pipes that connect all of our plants, factories, businesses, and even our homes. Mr. Speaker, today, homeowners and excavators alike must rely on a patchwork system to locate underground infrastructure, which is outdated, complicated, and cumbersome. To be frank, Ontarians are left with a system which is compromising the safety of homeowners and excavators alike. For example, Mr. Speaker, before you landscape or fence your lot, excavate a patio area or pool area, upgrade your driveway, repair your home's foundation or add a porch or another room to your house, you, as a homeowner or excavator, are expected to call for the locates of underground infrastructure on your property before you dig. In other words, you are expected, you, the homeowner or the excavator, are expected to call for the locations of those wires, pipelines, water mains, and anything else that might be under the ground where you are about to dig. Then your utilities, hopefully, will arrive to mark the ground above where this infrastructure exists. The problem, Mr. Speaker, lies that in many communities across Ontario, you may have to make up to, count these, 13, that's right, up to 13 different phone numbers to ensure that you have covered everything that may be under the ground in your particular location. So before you start your project, you need to account for electrical power lines, cables, street lights, traffic signals, gas and oil pipelines, sewers, etc. Telecommunications lines. Industry experts estimate that there's over $100 billion worth of buried infrastructure in our province, and yet there is no one source of complete or detailed information about the location of all of these critical assets. This is what I mean, Mr. Speaker, when I say that Ontario has an outdated, complicated and cumbersome system in place. So I don't think it will be much of a surprise to you when I say that some homeowners and excavators, I'm sad to say, simply aren't bothering to call for locates before they dig. 13 phone calls simply is 12 too many. Mr. Speaker, without easy access to complete and proper information, of underground infrastructure, damage regularly occurs to natural gas lines, electrical wiring and water mains. So at the very least, this means increased costs to homeowners, excavators, municipalities, taxpayers and the province. In fact, in Ontario alone, last year there were 3,200 natural gas pipeline strikes alone. Accidental damage to underground infrastructure is not only expensive, but it can be deadly. Today, the number of emergency calls that result from damage done to underground infrastructure in Ontario is on the rise. And, Mr. Speaker, each and every one of those pipeline strikes has the potential to end in tragedy. Consider, for example, what happened in April 24, 2003. A construction company working at an Etobicoke strip mall ruptured a gas line, sparking a massive explosion that killed 7 people, leveled the 2-story building and destroyed several storefronts and apartments located in that vicinity. 2008, Niagara, a landscape company accidentally ruptured a propane line in a property in Niagara Falls, and the propane leached through the earth into the adjacent basement, causing an accident. Mr. Speaker, just this past September, 2 Ottawa area residents sustained 1st and 2nd degree burns after rupturing a gas line while drilling post holes in their backyard. Neighbours in the townhouse community were able to escape without injury, but have been left to deal with the cost and stress of significant fire and water damage. In each and every one of these cases, Mr. Speaker, it was discovered that the companies and people at the site did not call to locate any of the underground infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, development across the province and in our communities has made the business of excavating very risky. Sitting idly by and doing nothing is no longer an acceptable option. The well-being and livelihood of the residents of Ontario cannot be taken for granted. I, along with MPP Miller and the many stakeholders here today, believe it is long overdue for our province to have a mandatory one-call system. That is why the member from Hamilton East, Stony Creek, and I have introduced Bill 8, the Ontario One Call Act 2011. Bill 8 will create a single call centre for all underground locates for use by homeowners and excavators alike. So instead of having to call up to 13 numbers to receive all of your locates, homeowners and excavators would make one free call. Mr. Speaker, this is a simple solution that cuts red tape. The organization and capacity to implement this system is currently available. Ontario One Call is already operating as an industry initiative out of a central call centre in Guelph, with 130 members representing 700 infrastructure agencies in Ontario, including over 40 municipalities that represent nearly 60% of Ontario's population. Unfortunately, industry analysts estimate that there are still about 400 organizations with assets in the ground that have not signed up. For those members wondering if this sort of system can work across a large jurisdiction such as Ontario, the answer is yes. Currently, each and every U.S. state has in place a mandatory one-call system. The federal government of the United States thought it was such a good idea, they mandated a national number, 811. When you dial 811 anywhere in the U.S., you are automatically connected to your call center that has access to your area's information. As a result of the 811 system, incidents of infrastructure and utility damage have decreased by close to 70% between 2004 and 2008. That's the sort of result that the good people of this province want when the House passes this legislation, if and when it should pass. I hope that all members of this House will recognize the need to implement this simple yet effective one-call solution. In conclusion, I ask that the members of this House please vote in favour of Bill 8 today and help move our province one step closer to creating the comprehensive one-call system. Thank you. And, Mr. Speaker, at this point, I would like to remit the remainder of my time to the member from Hamilton East, Stony Creek.